Thanks to the UK Society for giving us the chance to come to Scotland. My great-grandfather was left Dundee, Scotland in the 1880s and eventually ended up in Canada. So this has given me a chance to come back to one of the lands of my ancestors for the first time. These are my disclosures. None are really conflicts. So what I've been asked to talk about is one country's experience with health technology assessments as they have been described, especially around reimbursement of extended half-life factor VIII and factor IX, and what we can learn from that with regards to the introduction of new novel technologies, including gene therapy. This is the spoiler alert. I'm going to start with the conclusion. So the conclusion is that yes, health systems such as Canada's can and will pay for novel therapies for bleeding disorders if they can show improved health outcomes compared to the standard of care, and this is demonstrated, and the budget impact is reasonable. And the greater the improvement in health outcome or the value, the greater the willingness to pay the cost. Now, before I go on, a bit about Canada. It's a rich country, as you probably know. Higher GDP than countries like Germany, France, UK, Japan. In terms of percentage of GDP spent on health, it's around 10%, which is very similar to most of the Western European countries. So it's really quite typical of many of the developed countries. And in addition, its health system is very much like health systems in the UK and in Australia and New Zealand and other countries like that. So I think people from those countries will recognize some of the things I'm saying as they probably apply there as well. I've developed this, this personal analysis of the progress of care since the 1950s with all the different products on the left and some of the characteristics they might have on the top. And you can see, of course, constant improvement since then. Do I have a, yes, I have a mouse. Does that show up? Perfect. So 3 to 1, unfortunately, as you know, all know, plasma-derived products were very promising and turned out to be a tragedy for the community. And so they went from a 3 to a 1. And you can see that there are still some questions we have to ask in terms of these novel therapies and their value. I've given, as you see, and this is again my own personal analysis, a plus sign in terms of the extended half-life products over the standard half-life products for many characteristics. But that's not necessarily shared, as you will see, by the HTA bodies in Canada. So a bit more about Canada. It's a huge country. It has provinces and territories. Health is a provincial responsibility for the greatest part. It's a federation. And all the provinces are different, but Quebec, where I live, is more different, linguistically, culturally, and politically. And that makes for a complicated health system. We have a single national regulator, but in terms of our blood services, which actually purchase and distribute clotting factor concentrates, we divide into 2, Quebec and the rest of Canada. The same for the HTA bodies. There's one for Quebec, one for the rest of Canada. And decisions on purchasing products are made under the 2 systems. So I've got 2 systems to have. It's messy, and I'll spare you the messy details. So EHL products were approved in Canada in 2014, first in the world. We were very happy. We celebrated. And then the authorities decided that for the first time they would do HTAs with regard to EHL products. They were considered to be a different category of product. And so they were done in both jurisdictions. The HTA bodies concluded that the comparative efficacy was unknown between standard and extended, but assumed to be equal. The clinical benefits were unclear. Remember, we're talking early 2015, so there wasn't a lot of data back then. Interestingly, the lower burden of treatment with the EHL products was not given any value. In fact, the opposite. They said if the extended half-life of EHL factors led to better adherence, this will lead to more use, a larger cost increase, and less value for money. And they had very little information in their report about patient preference or patient-reported outcomes, nor did they ask. And the information that we provided to them, from what we can tell, was not considered. We provided them a number of patient testimonials on the patient-reported benefits of EHL products. So they decided in the end that these products could be introduced if cost-neutral and with conditions. And again, in Quebec, in the rest of Canada, they were quite liberal. The conditions were very inclusive and really included almost everybody. And there was quite a quick switch to EHL products by about 15 or 20% of the severe patients. In Quebec, they were much more restrictive and identified some very specific criteria: half-life less than 50% of normal, serious venous access issues, or other medically justifiable reasons to have access to an EHL product. And so far, 3 years later, only 2 or 3 patients have been approved. So two different answers. Yes, we will pay in the rest of Canada if cost neutral. In Quebec, we will pay even more, but you have to prove that the products are superior for these patients. Since then, the products have been subjected to the tenders, and we have a tender every 2 or 3 years. We have strong patient-clinician involvement in the tenders, very rigorous scoring system. I think it's a very fair system. Product quality is given the vast majority of the score, 70%. In Quebec, 30% of the price is factored in at the last moment. In Quebec, in the rest of Canada, 100% goes to the product quality, but value is also considered. And given the scoring system, even though we did our best to jig it so that what we thought were the more innovative products would carry the day, in the end, all the products were judged to be safe, efficacious, and of good quality. And the differences in the scores among the different products were trumped, I shouldn't use that word, trumped by the cost. And so we ended up with actually 5 products in the rest of Canada, 5 Factor VIIIs, including extended half-life, but not in the rest, not in Quebec. So cost certainly had an important effect. And what has been the long-term impact of these tenders? Well, here, this is really, I think, a key slide. So these are the 3 tenders since 2013. And I'm taking the approximate cost per adult patient per year with some of the lower cost standard half-life products that are available in Canada. And the cost has really gone down by half with each of the tenders. So that now the prices are in the neighborhood of $64,000 US per patient per year. And this is in the same ballpark probably as the published figures you've seen from Australia. What has this meant? Well, this has meant, number one, that our per capita IU use for Factor VIII has gone from about 5 to well over 7. You know, part of that, of course, is new babies and bigger people, but a lot of that, I think, is more prophylaxis, more aggressive prophylaxis, and that's a good thing. In Quebec, the conclusion was that you could achieve higher trough levels at lower cost with standard half-life products, albeit with the burden of more frequent infusions. So it's not a bad result in terms of access to products or to, I think, health outcomes, but it's caused a problem. These new prices for standard half-life factors are now the new norm. I can tell you the payers were very happy to achieve these kinds of prices. It took the pressure off the high cost of hemophilia care. It allowed them to focus on the high cost and increasing cost of IVIG, which is the main driver in the blood field. And I know, having sat with the payers on multiple selection advisory committees, that they are interested. They're not heartless. They are interested in improved health outcomes with novel products. but they evaluate them compared to the standard of care. And the cost of the standard of care now is very, very low compared to the past. So how can payers be convinced that a novel therapy is worth the cost? So these are some ideas I've come up with. Survival, lower annual bleed rate, better joint health outcomes, lower treatment burden, improved quality of life. Let's look at those. So longer survival. This is not going to be very helpful, I don't think. I think in Canada, the life expectancy for young patients with hemophilia A and B is now very close or at the normal level. So we can't do better. We could do worse, but we can't do better. What about lower annual bleed rates? Well, again, the ABRs for patients with hemophilia A and B are now very low. And we've seen numerous presentations at this conference where the annual bleed rates are 2 or 3. And you'll never get to 0. There'll always be patients who have breakthrough bleeds for whatever reason, often because of bad joints, trauma. So will payers pay to eliminate the last bleed? And of course, we know that ABRs don't tell the whole story. Better joint health scores. Well, this would certainly be an excellent surrogate measure of efficacy for a treatment. Certainly the goal is to have people who are mobile with excellent joints. But I don't think the data will be available to show that we have better joints with these novel therapies. The data is just not there yet. This is a long-term outcome. Lower treatment burden. Well, that's obvious that these newer therapies have a lower treatment burden, but do payers care? I've sat there in meetings where they say, well, it's just 1 more needle per week. And that's true. It is 1 more needle per week, and I think for most adults probably can handle 1 more needle per week. I think we probably need to bring them a mother with a child and having to infuse 3 times per week or more and see what that burden is. But they don't see that. So will payers spend to decrease the burden of treatment, which they call convenience, with no proof of improved health outcomes? And I say they won't. Well, maybe subcutaneous will be more impressive for them, or a one-time gene therapy. They'll see that as a much lower burden of treatment compared to the EHLs. It remains to be seen. Improved quality of life, and this would be via, I'm suggesting, and I certainly agree with a lot of the presentations before, via patient-reported outcomes. So these novel therapies may well decrease acute and chronic pain, increase mobility, improve ability to partake in activities of daily living, reduce absenteeism, promote social integration, including being in the workforce, and reduce anxiety and depression. But we have to have the data to convince them. So back to my homemade chart. In red, we have what's missing. We still need to collect the data on efficacy of these new products. We still need to get the information on the safety. There are still questions around safety. And in terms of the patient-reported outcomes and the value, we don't know yet. We don't have that data. We're starting to get it. And we don't know the cost, and the cost is likely to be much higher than current products. So this brings us to the $64,000 question, or as we heard this morning, the $1 million question. So a standard therapy for hemophilia A costs $64,000 today in a country like Canada. And payers base the cost of gene therapy on a given number of years of treatment. Well, 3 years, $192,000. 10 years, $640,000. But we're hearing costs of $1 million or more. That's 15 years of treatment. Will they pay? So what might convince them? Well, I think this is the kind of information we need. We need to show, obviously, low ABRs. We need to show higher factor levels, sustained, trough levels, or their surrogates. But we also need the key patient-desired outcomes. So less pain, greater mobility, daily living, greater social integration, and less psychosocial impact. And I end there. Thank you.